Hi everyone, I'm Shelley and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's topic is on hell, the firmament, and the deep. So I just wanted to touch a little bit on each of these, and I'm not going to delve too deeply into them, but I just wanted to go over some interesting things that I found regarding them, or what could possibly be regarding them when it comes to the physicality of them here on the earth. So this is a diagram of the cosmological model, or it is the cosmological model of the Hebrews, the ancient Hebrews. This is what you would consider to be biblical cosmology, which I've talked about in some of my videos. And so what you notice here on this model is that there is Sheol, which is underground, the subterranean earth, which I did touch on in this video right here, what lies beneath, if you wanted to go back and check that one out. But what I didn't get into there is that what is called hell is actually a separate aspect of Sheol. Sheol is the subterranean underground levels where it's claimed that some of the spirits are said to be down there in Sheol according to the Hebrew religion. But hell is actually a separate place that is reserved for eternal torment, fire, everything that you think of regarding hell. That's something that is actually different from Sheol, but is still, in my belief, a physical place here on earth. So if we look elsewhere on this model, you see the ocean here, which fine, but then down here is the abyss. Now, sometimes that's also called the great deep, or sometimes just the deep. I usually call it the deep. And the way I see it, it is something separate from the ocean. It is another level of water that is somehow not a part of the ocean. And I could never quite understand how that could be, but I always found it fascinating. And, these are all just theories of mine, which is what all of Question the Narrative is. And then we have, of course, the firmament, which the Hebrew word for that is rakia, which actually means a solid substance, something that is emblazoned. So it's not really just talking about the gaseous sky. It actually means something hard. And so, yeah, so there were some neat things that I found. One of these was actually the Kola Super Deep Borehole. I saw a video about this, I believe, years ago, and I kind of made the connection then, but I wasn't really so deep down the rabbit hole, so I kind of saw it, thought it was neat, and moved on. But I've moved back to it again because I just wanted to share it with you. So the Kola Super Deep Borehole, the deepest man-made hole on Earth, and it's the deepest artificial point on Earth. Now it's in Russia. The 40,230-foot deep, or 12.2-kilometer construction is so deep that locals swear you can hear the screams of souls tortured in hell. It took the Soviets almost 20 years to drill this far, but the drill bit was still only about one-third of the way through the crust to the Earth's mantle when the project came grinding to a halt in the chaos of post-Soviet Russia. Now, one thing that I want to point out here really doesn't have anything to do with hell, but I still have to say it because it will bother me if I don't. So it's the deepest man-made hole on Earth, but it only went 12.2 kilometers, which is less than 8 miles into the Earth. And it tells us that it only got one-third of the way through the Earth's crust. Yet, they tell us definitively all the time through diagrams what the layers of the Earth are like. And, kids do that in science class. I did it with my own children. I had them make the little model of the layers of the Earth before I really started digging deeper and questioning things. And so that's one thing that I wanted you to ask yourself. How do they know what the inside of the earth definitively looks like, or what it is composed of, if they've only ever gotten one-third of the way through? Now, getting back to the original topic, though, I want to point out to you again that it says construction is so deep that locals swear you can hear the screams of souls tortured in hell. Now, you might think, okay, that's probably just some local yokels who are coming up with some folklore trying to tell ghost stories. But it doesn't end there. So here it tells us that the drilling was stopped in 1992 when the temperature reached 356 degrees Fahrenheit. To me, that's pretty hot. And, you know, there, it doesn't say specifically in this article, but there are other articles that I have read in which it actually says that the drill bit that was being used could not withstand the heat. And that was one reason that they had to stop drilling, because they simply could not get through because it was so hot. And here it also says because funding was cut off. So that's another reason that they had to stop drilling. But now let's get into another borehole. This is a German borehole, and it is called Project Mohole. And it says here, the German borehole has been spared the fate of the others. The huge drill rig is still there and a tourist attraction today. But today the crane just lowers instruments for measurement. The site has become, in effect, an observatory of the planet, or even an art gallery. When Dutch artist Lotte Gievan lowered her microphone, protected by a thermal shield, down the German borehole, it picked up a deep rumbling sound that scientists couldn't explain, a rumbling that made her feel very small. It was the first time in my life the big ball, yeah, okay, I'll just read it. We live on came to life, and it sounds haunting, she says. Some people thought it did sound like hell. So it didn't just happen in the Russian borehole, but we're hearing the same thing about this German borehole. And to me, I think that what we're realizing as time goes on is that the Bible is real. And, I think a lot of people say that in theory, but they don't actually realize just how real it is. And yes, I do believe that places like hell are physical places. Could this be hot because it is down there in hell, what is described as the lake of fire? Could those actually be voices of torment? I don't know, but it's certainly something interesting to think about. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about with you is the firmament. And I've actually seen some really interesting videos on this topic, and I came across this article, and it has a video embedded in it that I did see a couple years ago. So I will again leave this link in the description box. You can watch any of these videos that you choose to, but I'm just going to read what this says here. Interesting video discussing the blue stones or blue ice of the firmament under study in Antarctica. And so it just says, I'm just going to read. Should I just read all of it? It's not very long. Well, I just like what she says here. Ignorance has no place here, and coercion doesn't work either. So what she says here is that she gets treated rudely by some subscribers for even mentioning flat earth. I said she. Oh, it's a Jerry. Sorry, it's a he. Sorry, Jerry. But anyway, but ignorance has no place here, and coercion doesn't work either. If a topic that supports scripture has merit, that topic has a place here. This is interesting and has a ring of authenticity to it based on my own research into Antarctica in years past. In fact, take a look at this ancient black and white photo of what does look like an ice wall. Now, I think that most of us in this community, when we think of ice wall, we think of the actual wall of ice surrounding Antarctica, which contains the water. But what he is referring to as an ice wall is what we would call the firmament. So I have to make that distinction. Black and white photo of what does look like an ice wall, taken over 100 years ago by George Rayner, a very respected photographer who I think financed his own trip to Antarctica. So we have this right here. And what you can see is you can see some water, you can see some mountains, and that certainly would look like some sort of ice wall, ice firmament, or at least at the very least, some sort of solid firmament barrier behind the mountain there. And then there's another photo right here that just shows it up closer. You can get the texture of it. Very interesting. And this isn't something that, is easy to find, because you know that a lot of these things are covered up. They don't want people to know about these, let alone question them. But this person was kind enough to post them, and I actually think I had to find this on DuckDuckGo, which sometimes isn't much better than Google, but this time it was. Anyway, bear in mind that if there are waters above, as Yahuwah says, then there are waters beside too. Rayner had no motive to lie about his image. And that's the thing, if these photos were taken 100 years ago, there was no social media then. Why would he feel the need to lie about these photos? As far as I know, it didn't make him famous. As far as I know, it didn't get him any sort of money. He just took the photo as he saw it. But nowadays, everything is questioned because unfortunately, we have CGI now. We're at the point where we really don't know what is believable, or what has been manipulated, what is real and what is not. But as you do look here, we have the waters above the firmament, and they certainly would be down the sides too, wouldn't they? And that could very well be part of the ice wall or the firmament that we are looking at there. And there's just another one here that I wanted to share. And here it does say rakia. And that again is the Hebrew word for the firmament. It's something hard. So this article is very interesting. It was made by, well, they used to be called Flat Earth Brothers. I actually think now they're called Founded Earth Brothers, but they actually had someone write into them telling them about how they were digging down or they were working down in Antarctica drilling for ice, and they came across this fascinating blue ice. So the blue ice that they came across, they were calling the sky stone. It's the mysterious stone made of pure oxygen, which was found down in Antarctica. And basically what they were saying is that the core samples that they would take were mostly regular ice. And those were the core samples that they would pull out when, the news came to interview them and see what they were doing, or when they would be getting any sort of publicity. It would always just be that normal, typical ice that you would expect to see. They would only ever get the blue ice out when those people were not there. And the blue ice was actually what they studied most of the time. And so the theory is that this is actually ice that was pulled off of the firmament, off of that wall that I just showed you a picture of. And it has some very interesting characteristics that typical ice does not have. It's flexible. It's actually colder than ice. It cannot be handled by your hands. If you would put it on your skin would immediately freeze. And it did not melt into water. It just shrunk. So if you would hold it and it would start getting warm, it would just start shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. But your glove, if you were holding it, would not get wet. It did not shrink into water. So again, I really recommend that you watch this video. It's fascinating. And let's see. One thing that I did want to show you is another one here. This is the fascinating alien stones that fell on Earth. Here is a picture of one. And to me, that certainly sounds a lot like what they're calling the ice, or possibly maybe it's not as cold if it's not down in the Antarctic region, but it is still that same color, because this fell in West Africa. So obviously there it wouldn't be that cold. Well, not cold at all. Let's just read what this says here. So over billions of years, our planet, again, I'm just reading what it says, has attracted a large number of meteorites that have crashed on the surface. People have collected pieces of such meteorites throughout history, with some attributing a divine nature to them, while others collect them purely out of scientific curiosity. The sky stone is believed to be one such remnant from a meteorite. Bluish in color, the stone was found to be composed largely of oxygen. Now, one thing that I want to say is that, so they're considering this to be a meteorite. And one theory about meteorites, if you are a believer in biblical cosmology, people always ask, well, what are meteorites? And some people have said that they believe that meteorites are actually pieces of the firmament falling off. And this could certainly be the case if they are classifying this as a meteorite. The sky stone was purportedly discovered in 1990 in Sierra Leone, West Africa. Local legends stated that the stones were actually beings that once lived in the sky. Disturbed by their wrongdoings, God cast them into stones and threw them to earth to remain buried beneath its soil. Tony sent the stone for analysis to laboratories in Rome, Germany, and Tokyo. The stone was made up of 77% oxygen, 20% carbon, and lime. Traces of silicone and other materials were also found. Researchers concluded that the stone was different from any other stone found on Earth. Could it be because it was part of the firmament? Probably originating outside the planet. Well, the firmament certainly is outside of what I would call the plane. So that is something very interesting. And then we have this. Planes dropping blue ice can be identified using radar images. And here, I believe this is in Delhi. So in India, they found blue ice that was being dropped out of the sky. And what it basically happened in this article was that they said the blue ice is frozen sewage material leaked mid-flight from toilets of aircrafts on the flight route. So to me, it almost seems like they're just explaining it away by giving some outlandish explanation and also making it something disgusting so that no one's going to want to pick it up and study it if they think that it's actually coming from the toilets of an airplane. So could they just be using this as a cover story so that people aren't as interested and don't decide to collect it, send it in for analysis because they're like, ew, this is just like frozen poop. Why would I want to keep this? You know, it's certainly a question to ask. Now, I do have to point out though that there is blue ice that actually Noah talks about, not Noah as in Noah's Ark, but in the oceanic study, I don't remember, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So they've talked about blue ice areas in Antarctica also. But what I found was that it actually associates them with meteorites here too, which I think is very interesting. But what it basically said was that they could be the blue ice is found in mostly coastal regions. And to me, could that mean coastal as in out towards the firmament? I don't know. And I didn't have time to read through this entire article. There were a few things that I was wishing I could click on. Like right here, it just takes you to a citation. I was hoping that it would take me specifically to the article that it was, because they claimed that they have been studying blue ice areas since 1949, 1952. So I wanted to read about that, but when I clicked on it, it did not take me to where I wanted to go. But anyway, could this be the blue ice of the firmament? Because what color is the sky? The sky is blue. That's why it can be called sky ice. Sometimes they're called sky stones. And I want to read to you Ezekiel 126. Above the vaults over their heads was what looked like a throne of lapis lazuli, and high above on the throne was a figure like that of a man. What color is lapis lazuli? Well, it's blue. Now, um, in some versions, it's called the sapphire. So in the King James Bible, and above the firmament, again, yes, the firmament that was over their heads was the likeness of a throne, as the appearance of a sapphire stone. So it is speaking specifically of a throne with the appearance of a sapphire, but I find it interesting that that sapphire color is being associated with the vaults over their heads or with the firmament. So lastly, I just wanted to talk about the deep or the great deep or the abyss. And again, this is this area underneath the earth that I believe is separate from the ocean. And I have some evidence that that could very well be the case. So if we look here, spectacular underwater brine lake. And during our 2015 exploration in the Gulf of Mexico, the team encountered a spectacular brine pool and collected mussel samples from the area. A brine lake is water far more saline than the surrounding seawater, so it doesn't mix and creates its own surface tension. As a result, you see surface waves and find very unusual geologic features and biology living on their shores. And so if you actually look at some of these photos, now these brine lakes are only found in the deepest parts of the oceans. They have their own shorelines. You can see waves rippling on them. Now keep in mind, they are in water, yet they are basically like their own beaches because this water is separate from the rest of the water because it has a much higher salt content. So I encourage you to come back and look through some of these photos because they're beautiful and it really does give you a lot to think about. This is the edge of the underwater river's bank. And again, you can see the ripples of the waves of the water in the water. Now, something that I found years ago was a video of an explorer who had taken a submersible and was actually exploring and came across one of these brine lakes. And what he actually showed, and I can't, because of just copyrights and everything with YouTube, I unfortunately can't play the video, but I will leave a link to this video also so you can watch it. It's only 2 minutes long, but I keep it on long enough to show you that what he's describing is that his submersible actually bounced off of the water. And we're going to get an ad. So just hold on 1 second. Lost my place. Hold on. Well, somehow it got over to another video, which is how that happened. But anyway, so what happened was that his submersible actually bounced off of the water. And that's what he's showing you. The hand motion that he just did is him showing you that his submersible actually would not go down into that water. It literally bounced off the water. And to me, I was thinking that certainly seems like it could be considered a barrier to, from the ocean to the deep. Could that be what we are looking for? Could those brine lakes that are in the deepest part of the ocean be the entrances to the deep? And again, the deep and the firmament, these are all areas that, I would assume that the Lord would not want us to explore, because there's a reason that it's so hard to get to them. There's a reason that there are barriers. But at the same time, for scientists and the government to deny that these places exist, it really makes you wonder why. What is the truth of these? And should I start looking into these things a little bit more? That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one either here or over on Instagram. If you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.